What's in a contract and how do you explain it in simple English? In this beginner legal English class, you'll learn key vocabulary like agreement, parties, terms, and signature. You'll also practice using have to and must to talk about legal obligations clearly and correctly. Perfect for anyone starting to work with legal documents in English. We know learning legal English as a beginner can be very difficult. That's why we built a step by step course in school. Join our school group for beginner friendly lessons, webinars, and a private forum so you can finally speak legal English with confidence. Here's what you'll learn today. First, we'll look at key words that are used in contracts, like agreement, which is a promise between two or more people, parties, which means the people involved, terms, the rules in the contract, and signature, the person's name written to show agreement. Next, we'll learn how to use have to and must to talk about obligations, what people need to do in a contract. Finally, we'll practice making simple sentences about contracts to help you speak clearly. Let's start with a simple question. What is a contract? A contract is a written or spoken agreement between two or more people. We call them parties who agree to do something. For example, a contract can be about selling a house, working for a company, or renting an apartment. Why do people sign contracts? The signature shows they agree with the terms, the rules of the agreement. In this class, we will learn these words and how to talk about what people have to do in contracts. Let's start with the word agreement. Imagine you want to buy a laptop. You talk to the seller and you both promise to do something. You promise to pay money and the seller promises to give you the laptop. This promise is called an agreement. In legal work, agreements are very important because they show what each person promises to do. Without an agreement, it's hard to know what is expected. For example, a contract might say the seller will deliver the goods by Friday. That sentence tells us part of the agreement. Now let's learn parties. Imagine two people, Maria and Juan. Maria wants to rent a house from Juan. Maria and Juan are the parties in the contract, the people who make the promise to each other. When lawyers talk about contracts, they use the word parties to mean everyone involved. For example, the two parties signed the contract yesterday. This means both Maria and Juan agreed to the contract by signing it. The next word is terms. Imagine you and a friend agreed to buy a car together. You make rules, like when you will pay money and who will drive the car. These rules are the terms of your agreement. In contracts, terms are very important because they explain exactly what each party must do. For example, one of the terms says payment must be made within 30 days. This tells us when the money needs to be paid. Now, let's talk about signature. Imagine you sign a paper with your name. This shows you agree with what is written there. In legal contracts, a signature makes the agreement official. For example, both parties gave their signatures at the bottom of the contract. This means everyone involved said, "Yes, I agree." Without signatures, a contract may not be valid. Next word, obligation. Imagine you promise to paint your friend's house next week. Because of your promise, you have an obligation. you must paint the house on time. In contracts, obligations are what each party must do. For example, the contract creates an obligation to deliver the goods on time. This means the seller must send the goods when promised. Obligations are very important in legal agreements. Finally, the word contract. Imagine two friends write a paper that says what they promise to do for each other. This paper is a contract. A contract is a legal document that shows the agreement between two or more people or groups. It explains the rights and obligations of everyone involved so everyone knows what to do. For example, the contract explains the rights and duties, obligations of both parties. Contracts help protect people by making sure everyone keeps their promises. Let's start with a simple question. What is the legal word for a promise between two people to do something? Imagine you want to buy a laptop. You promise to pay, and the seller promises to deliver it tomorrow. You both say yes to this promise. That's the beginning of something legal. The word for this is agreement. An agreement is the foundation of almost every legal relationship. Here's the next question. What do we call the people or groups in a contract? Picture this. Maria wants to rent an apartment from Juan. They write down their promises and both agree to follow the rules. Maria and Juan are the people involved. They are the ones making the deal. In legal English, they are called parties. Every contract needs at least two parties, the people who are bound by the terms. What do we call the specific rules inside a contract? Imagine this. You agree to buy a car with a friend. You decide who pays what and when each of you will drive it. You write it all down. These rules are called the terms. Terms tell you exactly what each party must do, like pay by a certain date or deliver something on time. Now, what do you do to show you officially agree to a contract? Let's say you're ready to sign a rental agreement. You read it, agree to the rules, and then you write your name at the bottom. That's your signature. In law, your signature makes the agreement official. Imagine you promise to paint a friend's house next week. Because of that promise, you're expected to do it. That promise is an obligation. In legal English, an obligation is a duty, something you must do because you agreed or because the law says so. What do we call the whole document that shows an agreement? Now, picture two companies making a deal. They list the terms, sign their names, and keep a copy. What is that document called? A contract. A contract is what makes the agreement real, clear, and enforceable. Now, let's learn how to talk about obligations, what someone needs to do. We use have to and must for this. For have to, the structure changes depending on the subject. For I, you, we, and they, we say have to plus the action. For example, I have to sign the contract today. For he, she, and it, we say has to plus the action. She has to follow the terms. Must is different. It is the same for all subjects. For example, you must read the agreement carefully. Have to and must show strong obligation, something important to do. In legal English, talking about what you have to do in contracts is very common. Let's bring these phrases to life with real situations from a legal workplace. First, imagine this. Your manager turns to you and says he has to sign the contract tomorrow. Maybe the deadline is urgent or the deal depends on it. Because the subject is he, we use has to. This shows it's an obligation, something required. Now, picture a team meeting. The legal assistant says we have to read the contract terms carefully. It's important to avoid mistakes, so reading carefully is not optional. Here, we uses have to, and the sentence shows a shared responsibility. Finally, you are speaking with the client. You say, you must arrive on time for the meeting. This one uses must. It's strong, clear, and a little more formal. We use must when we want to be direct, especially in professional or legal settings. So remember, has for he, she, it, have to for I, you, we, they, and must when you want to be very formal. For example, he has to sign the contract tomorrow. We have to read all the terms. You have to arrive on time. Great job. Let's start with the idiom seal the deal. Imagine two companies talking for weeks about a contract. They discuss the price, the terms, and the delivery date. When they both agree and sign the contract, they seal the deal. This phrase means they finished the agreement successfully, like putting a seal on an important letter to close it tightly. For example, after weeks of negotiation, both parties finally sealed the deal. In legal work, sealing the deal is a big moment. It means the agreement is official and ready to go. Next idiom, by the book. Imagine a lawyer working carefully to follow every rule and law. They do everything by the books. That means they don't take shortcuts or guess. It means following the rules exactly, without breaking or changing them. For example, the lawyer did everything by the book to avoid mistakes. When working with contracts, it's important to do things by the book, so everyone is safe and clear about what happens. Here is an important legal phrase, binding agreement. A binding agreement means that when people sign a contract, they must follow the rules inside. It is not optional. The law makes it necessary. For example, once signed, the contract became a binding agreement. This means the parties promise to do what the contract says, and the law will enforce it if they don't. Last phrase for today, draw up a contract. This means to prepare and write a contract. Now, usually a lawyer or legal professional draws up the contract to make sure it is clear and complete. For example, the lawyer drew up a contract for the sale of the property. Drawing up a contract is an important step because it creates a clear agreement that everyone can understand and follow. Let's practice our idioms with a story. Imagine you are working with a client on a big contract. First, the lawyer needs to draw up a contract carefully. This means writing the contract so it includes all important details. The lawyer wants to do everything by the book, following all the rules and laws exactly. After talking with the client and the other party, they finally seal the deal. They agree and sign the contract. Once signed, the contract becomes a binding agreement, which means everyone must follow the rules in the contract. So, in this story, the lawyer draws up the contract, follows the law by the book, seals the deal by signing, and creates a binding agreement. Can you see how these idioms fit naturally in the story of making a contract? Let me share a story about a contract between two companies, Company A and Company B. First, the two parties meet to discuss the important terms, like price, delivery dates, and payment methods. These terms are the rules both companies must follow. Next, the lawyer draws up the contract carefully, writing down all the details to make sure everything is clear and legal. This process is done by the book, meaning the lawyer follows all the legal rules exactly to avoid any problems. Before anything happens, both parties have to read the agreement and understand the agreement. This is their obligation. They must know what they are agreeing to. When everything is ready, both companies sign the contract and seal the deal. This means the agreement is complete and official. After signing, the contract becomes a binding agreement. Now each party has clear obligations, things they must do according to the contract. This careful process protects both companies and makes sure everyone knows their responsibility. It shows how important clear language and following the law by the book are in legal work. So from discussing terms to sealing the deal, every step is important for a strong contract. Before we finish, let's review what we learned today. We started with important contract vocabulary, words like agreement, parties, terms, signature, obligation, and contract. These are building blocks for understanding legal documents. Then we focused on grammar, how to use have to and must to talk about what people need to do in contracts. These words help us explain obligations clearly. We also learned some useful idioms and legal phrases, like seal the deal when an agreement is finalized, doing things by the book to follow the law carefully, what it means to have a binding agreement, and how lawyers draw up a contract to make it official. Finally, we saw how all these pieces come together in real life, from discussing terms and preparing the contract to signing and agreeing on obligations. Great work today. Keep practicing these words and phrases, and you'll get more confident in talking about contracts and obligations in legal English. We know that learning legal English as a beginner is difficult. So, join our school group for easy lessons, live webinars, and a very supportive forum. And start speaking legal English confidently. The link is in the description.